to home because I did see my next guest walk into the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Karen Malcolm with the Protect Our Healthcare Coalition. There's a rally at the State House tomorrow. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
You are armed with a lot of information.
I like to be correct in any information that I give. Let's put it that way.
So you are fully armed here, and I wanted you to come in. I think I mentioned talked with a DC consultant about what's going on down there right now. As we heard today, not going to be a vote this week.
Right.
They're going to kind of go back and sort of tweak. They know they don't have the votes for it. So, but you're going to continue to keep the pressure on.
We are absolutely supporting our peers, our advocate peers in key states across the nation on this issue. So we have organized a rally to take place in front of the State House tomorrow, which is Wednesday the 28th, 6 p.m. The Smith Street side of the State House will be outside. It's supposed to be a beautiful day. And it's just a chance for us as Rhode Islanders to demonstrate our opposition to the truly draconian cuts to coverage that the Senate version, as well as the House version of the Obamacare repeal legislation would bring to the nation.
Who's going to be speaking tomorrow?
So tomorrow we have a few speakers, including Reverend Don Anderson of the Rhode Island Council of Churches. He's going to be speaking to the moral component of this issue, in as much as the most vulnerable to the loss of coverage under this plan are our poorest neighbors, friends and neighbors, working poor families who are covered under the Medicaid expansion, but also all of those folks who are dependent on Medicaid, particularly, who are disabled, who are elderly living in long-term care facilities, who are special needs kids, because in fact both the House and the Senate, U.S. Senate version of this legislation goes far beyond changes to the Affordable Care Act by really dismantling and reshaping the 54-year-old traditional Medicaid program. And so that's a big concern. We will also have Charles Feldman, who is a real advocate in the mental health community, because another piece of what is happening in Congress, both on the House and the Senate side, is the erosion of what are known as essential health benefits, and that sounds really policy wonky, but what that is are those consumer protections, patient protections that say things like your insurance plan, if you're paying good money, hard-earned money in the individual marketplace for insurance, that insurance should be there for the things you need when you need it. Things like cancer screening, things like prenatal coverage, which is critically important to making sure we have healthy babies born. So those and things like coverage for mental health and substance use treatment, which, as we all know, as we face and confront this opioid epidemic, is critically important.
So you've had this rally planned, and we're keeping an eye on what's happening in D.C. Do you have any hopes for any tweaking of the legislation? You know, hearing again that they just don't have the votes for it as it stands right now. Clearly, I'm sure will not be happy with any final measure, but are you trying to impact what's going on in D.C. right now?
The fact is that the legislation as it's been crafted by the GOP leadership isn't about what we would all hope for, an improvement of healthcare and healthcare coverage for Americans, right? It just doesn't do that. It causes huge losses in coverage. It radically reshapes our Medicaid program, and it erodes the patient protections that people rely on. So truthfully, from my personal perspective, and I think from the perspective of the 21 organizations that are part of the Protect Our Healthcare Coalition, is that we would see a true return to bipartisanship, to look at the Affordable Care Act and fix the components of it that need to be fixed, because everybody agrees that there are small populations and groups of people that have not fared well under that. We acknowledge that, right? And so how do you deal with that? Well, we need fixes that don't cost more people coverage, that don't raise costs for people more than they already are, but that really fixes those problems. And the legislation we're seeing just doesn't do that. So our hope is that the well-thinking folks in the GOP in Congress will say enough is enough on this, which is this plan, which is really more about giving a tax cut to super wealthy households, the top 400 households in the country, and return to open dialogue, bipartisan, with the experts at the table. There are lots of people who know a lot about this stuff, to develop the fixes to the Affordable Care Act to ensure that the rates of coverage increase, not cost rates, but the rates of people participating in our insurance pools nationally goes up, and that their premiums go down. That's what we want for everybody, because everyone, especially in the wealthiest nation in the world, deserves honest, affordable coverage to get the health care they need when they need it.
So you're having this big rally tomorrow at the State House at 6 o'clock. If you're
Yes.
watching live, come back later. We'll provide more information and contact information as well. But let's go, let's look into the future a little bit. What happens, you're organized, you've got people coming out. What happens if a piece of legislation goes through Congress down there that you're not happy with? What can you then do?
Well, so, this is the challenge I think that everyone is facing. Not only the anxiety of individuals who are buying their coverage affordably through HealthSource Rhode Island, not only for the anxiety of people who are covered under Medicaid expansion, but the anxiety of providers, of insurers, and of our state policy makers around what this is all going to mean. And I think as a nation as a whole, we're all suffering a bit with this type of anxiety. So our thought is that we need to start right now, here at the state level, to put into place measures that will protect people, that demonstrate both to our insurance marketplace as well as to patients and consumers in Rhode Island that our state leadership is putting their well-being first and foremost as the starting point for any appropriate responses that need to happen legislatively based on what comes out of DC. Does that make sense?
That certainly does, and as you know, you're providing this rally to show the support for tomorrow. It's a little over 24 hours away.
Yes.
What's your next 24 hours going to look like getting ready for the rally?
Ooh, making signs. If you are planning on being at the rally, please bring friends, family, and signs. So making a lot of signs, doing a lot of work to just reach our network. So the many organizations, including Indivisible Rhode Island and Resist Hate, and all of the many organizations that are part of our coalition, are making calls to their constituencies to let them know this is happening. So letting people know that this is happening and please come. And it's really just an opportunity for us to voice our opposition to the secrecy and the backdoor negotiations going on in Washington, and our hope for the best for everybody's care and coverage.
Now you're focusing, obviously, what's going on in place in DC. Anything at the state level that you want to mention?
Yes, so we have been working very hard on a piece of legislation that would put the patient protections that we all benefit from right now that are in the Affordable Care Act into our state policy. And that piece of legislation is called the Market Stability and Consumer Protection Act. And that's really just, again, looking forward to say, we need to be putting some things in place right now so that people know they're not going to, if they've got a pre-existing condition, that at least in Rhode Island, we're going to say, you get covered no matter what. It passed overwhelmingly in Rhode Island State Senate, and we are struggling to get it through in the Rhode Island House of Representatives. So we're asking people, please call your state rep and encourage them to speak with House Speaker Mattiello to bring this bill to the floor for a House vote.
And is there a sense with hearing today from the Speaker that there's going to be a fall session dealing with the Pawtucket Red Sox issue, that things that, again, we're at these waning days, but does it give hope that stuff can be accomplished, or is it just, you've got to put the pressure on now?
need to put the pressure on now, at least as far as this healthcare piece, the Market Stability and Consumer Protection Act. I can't speak to the other stuff, and I have not yet. I'm not insider enough to know yet about what they might be doing in terms
And the
of
fall.
calling the assembly back in the fall.
Yes, well, again, we got indications today from the speaker that would be the case, but
Yes.
they are in the waning days up there.
It's the final push. And you can tell people are, working really hard on behalf of, there's mental health advocates up there representing the needs of the mental health community. There are housing advocates up there. There are folks up there working on earned sick days, which is just so critically important to make sure that lower income working families, that everyone has the paid time off they need to see a doctor. So that's an issue tied to healthcare as well. So yeah, people are up there working really hard on these issues for Rhode Islanders.
And we are hearing from up there, and that's why I want to get folks here in the studio and to let viewers know what's taking place on Wednesday, 6 o'clock at the State House, Smith Street side.
Yes.
And as I said, after the fact here, we'll put more information out as well to give you the heads up at what's taking place tomorrow. But the Protect Our Healthcare Coalition, again, having a rally just to express the concerns about what's happening in D.C. And Karen Malcolm, I appreciate you taking the time to come in today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
It was
so
wonderful
much.
to be here. Thanks for having me.
Take care. I know you're busy.